Welcome, and thanks for joining us for this second in our series of presentations on Length of Service Awards programs. Today, I'm joined with Paul Cognetta. Paul is the Vice President of Operations at Penflex. And Paul, let's dive right into this. I know we've heard, as we talk about recruitment and retention and some of the struggles that departments are having getting new memberships, LOSAP keeps getting tossed around as one of these things that could really help in that process. So if we could, let's dive into what is LOSAP and what's it mean for the volunteers.
So Dave, thanks for having me, and you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, presently, right now, a lot of fire departments, excuse me, and ambulatory services are having trouble attracting people to volunteer. And there is this great benefit called the Length of Service Award Program that will reward people for volunteering their time and efforts financially. So the longer someone volunteers, the larger this financial reward could be for an individual. And really, Dave, today's presentation is really broken into two pieces. First, the importance of volunteering. And then second, what are the financial rewards that someone potentially could receive for their efforts?
So let's dive right into that a little bit. We always hear about volunteering and the volunteer fire service. Why is volunteering so important?
Well, Dave, one of the things that I always like to stress when I'm talking to fire districts and municipalities about this is volunteering. It's the backbone of most of these municipalities. Without volunteers, a lot of these municipalities can't even function. And most of them are struggling to find volunteers these days because there's so many competing factors in life in general. And what municipalities are trying to do is to explain to their voting public, if you will, the importance of having a LOSAP program put in place so they can retain and attract people to come in to volunteer for a LOSAP program.
So Paul, we talk about the importance of volunteering. We talk about what's that mean. Is there some numbers that'll help back some of this up?
Dave, I'm glad you asked that question because we did, for this webinar, go to the National Volunteer Fire Council to get some figures that really emphasize our points. Presently, 67% of the firefighters in the United States are completely volunteers. I mean, we're talking 2/3 of the entire country are volunteer firefighters and EMS workers. And when we drill down to that number, that's 745,000 individuals that volunteer their time and give their effort in their communities to help members within their community. And when we look at fire departments as a whole, right now there's over 29,000 fire departments. Of them, over 19,000 are completely made up of volunteers. So when you think about the struggles that municipalities may have about not being able to attract volunteers and potentially having to close a fire department or an ambulatory department because they can't find volunteers, it is critical now for municipalities and local governments to implement these LOSAP awards to attract and retain volunteers. And Dave, you'll even see now municipalities that have LOSAPs in place, they're increasing their financial rewards to keep people in place, to have them continuing to volunteer. So it's certainly something that is worthwhile. And looking on the next slide, you'll see the different types of calls that these volunteers go on.
So we keep talking about the fire service, and I think, we think all the way back to the days of Ben Franklin and when the first volunteer fire service was organized, and that basically was to protect the community from fire. But I think as you look at these numbers and you get those stats from NVFC, you're going to start realizing that it's a lot more than a fire department. So just how busy are they, and what are some of those other types of calls that they're going on?
Well, Dave, as we received the information from the National Volunteer Fire Council, I mean, last year alone, 36 million calls were made to fire and emergency medical departments. That number is staggering, 36 million. And it's just simply not fires anymore or medical events. I mean, now we're going into natural disasters. I mean, we see, unfortunately, all the forest fires that are out west. A lot of volunteers are part of that and helping. Water rescue emergencies, boating situations, hazardous material incidences. The work that volunteers are doing now go far beyond just fires. Their scope of expertise for a volunteer is becoming greater as the number of calls continue to increase.
So as we look at the fire service across the country, we know that there's both, well, there's career departments, there's volunteer departments, there's combination departments. As a member of the community, why would somebody volunteer? Why would they give up their time to do this for their community?
Well, Dave, again, when we did the research on this, one of the things that we found from the University of San Diego was they did top reasons to volunteer. And this was not just based on a fire type situation, but just community involvement in general from a volunteering perspective. And I was amazed to see how many pieces of this really definitely apply to the fire and EMS side of volunteering. For example, number 9, it saves resources. A lot of municipalities can't afford a paid fire department. So from a resource perspective, having a volunteer fire department does save on resources. Number 8, volunteers gain professional experience. A lot of the volunteers that receive training over time, it's the same training that paid firefighters and EMS workers are receiving. There is no differentiation in training. So from an experience level, volunteers gain a very high level of experience. Number 5, volunteering strengthens your community. As I mentioned earlier, what if we didn't have those volunteers in place? What would happen to the community? What would happen to the people that are in medical emergencies, but there's no one to respond to them? What would happen? And number 1, which is in all volunteering, you make a difference. Your absence, you not being there, your level of dedication if you're not there, your level of commitment if you're not there, this creates such a great hole, Dave, in a community and certainly in someone's individual life if they can't be saved because they're in a fire and God forbid they're trapped and there's no one to respond to a call, or they're having a medical emergency and there's not an EMS worker to come to their home and provide life-saving needs. What would happen? So in that respect, volunteering is really the backbone of the LOSAP program. There is no LOSAP program, Dave, without volunteers.
So I think you've done a great job of reminding us all, the importance of volunteering and why we do that. But we also have to sit there and look at it going, all these reasons I want to belong to my local fire department or EMS agency. I want to do things for my community, but I also have to realize this is going to take a lot of my time. It's going to take a lot of my commitment as an individual. So, it always gets back, everything you look at, it's like the what's in it for me. So, I think LOSAP gives us that what's in it for me. And while it certainly isn't going to compensate for everything that a person does, I think it's a great step in recognizing that person and giving them some kind of reward.
And Dave, that's a good way to look at it. I always tell people, I don't know too many life situations where you can volunteer and then receive a financial reward for your volunteering efforts. For most parts, volunteering is your giving of your time and yourself, and there is nothing in return except the feeling that you have of making a difference. Well, with the LOSAP program in place, municipalities are able to give a financial reward for that individual who does dedicate their time and service and effort and does it over time, where they can be financially awarded for their efforts. And there aren't too many situations that do that, but LOSAP is one of them.
And I think that's important to recognize is that the fire department's in competition. As a member of my community, there's a lot of things that I can volunteer for. And there's a lot of things that I can feel good about. So the fire service is actually competing with all these other organizations that are out there for that same individual to be part of their community. So just what's it look like? How, what does this mean to a volunteer? What are they going to get out of a LOSAP program?
So Dave, what we try to do is illustrate two simple points. So LOSAP, you can either have what is known as a defined benefit plan, and that is a monthly benefit for life. So once you reach your entitlement age, and there's different ages, of course, they can range anywhere from 55 to 65. But once you reach that entitlement age, then you're entitled to a monthly benefit. Now that monthly benefit usually starts out at $20 per month. Some are at 30, but then it's multiplied by the number of years that you volunteer. And we'll show in a second how the longer you're in, the greater the sum of money that you can earn for your efforts. So that's one type of plan. The other is a defined contribution. The difference with this plan is it's a lump sum dollar amount that a participant would earn versus a monthly benefit. So again, it's really based upon the municipality as to what plan they will put in place, but either plan does offer a financial award once you reach entitlement. And if we go to the next slide, the graph will be able to illustrate that point for you. So looking on the defined benefit, we have someone that would earn a monthly benefit of $10 a month for 30 years. And you'll see that orange graph as to what it would equate to. So you're talking roughly $50,000. You see the gray bar, it's someone who's going to receive a monthly benefit of $20 for 40 years of service. You're roughly at $150,000. And then someone who receives a monthly benefit of $30,000 for up to 50 years. And you can see you're close to $300,000. So again, this is a situation where you as a volunteer giving of your time and effort and your dedication to your community, you're being rewarded for your volunteering once you come to your entitlement age. And again, just taking the middle one of the $20 a month for 40 years, that's $150,000 that you're able to earn. I mean, that's a nice supplement to any other retirement income that you may receive from the outside doing your regular job, if you will. And then on the defined contribution side, again, works a little different in the sense that, the first bar, the orangish bar, someone gets a payout of $700 a year, and then times $30 or 30 years, I should say, gets you up to 100,000. And someone that would get a benefit of $1,000, and at 40 years, you're up to like 200,000. And someone that would receive a payout of $1,200 for the year times 50 years, again, you're up to like 250,000. And one of the things that we do find, Dave, because we've been doing this well over 30 years, Penflex, administering LOSAP plans, is there a lot of people that will volunteer for several years. So when someone's looking at this bar graph and saying, geez, I don't know if I'm going to do this for 30 years or 40 years, you'd be surprised how many people do stay in for those periods of time until they reach their entitlement age and do walk away with some very large sums of money. But again, they've committed their time and effort to their community and should be rightfully rewarded for their efforts.
So when you start talking about numbers of 100, 150, 200, up to 300,000, you've got my attention. And certainly something that someone, that's the goal of the program, is to get the attention of those people that are going to volunteer for your organizations. What are some of those other benefits, or what are some other things that we want to make sure that those people that are looking to volunteer understand about a LOSAP program and why it's so important?
Yeah. So, again, the nice financial benefits to the LOSAP piece, Dave, is if you were to become disabled, while volunteering, there are disability benefits for your family. That is additional. Also, life insurance benefits. If you were to pass away during your time as a volunteer, you would be able to receive life insurance benefits. So again, these are additional supplemental incomes for your family because of what you've given back to your community based off of your time and commitment. And certainly,
very important. And I think, when we start talking, and I look at my, IRA from my normal employer and those type of things, all of those numbers look great. But then when we start figuring out the tax implications, they may not look quite so hot. Is there some tax purposes or implications to a LOSAP program?
sure. So Dave, we'll illustrate New York, for example, because that's certainly where Penflex is domiciled, and we want to use that as an example. So one is tax exemption. If you take your distribution in more than one lump sum payment, so if you take it in 2 or more installments, New York State will not tax that distribution. So that money becomes yours. So, let's say you get 100,000 and you spread that out, instead of taking it in one big lump sum, and you spread it out in 2 and 3 or 4 payments, you're not taxed on any of that. That's a tremendous benefit. And then, because again, lawmakers are understanding the importance of volunteering and how volunteers impact their local community, that now there are some local laws in place by New York State where there are actually property tax breaks for volunteers in New York. So now on your property tax, because you volunteered and you're volunteering, giving back to your local community, you're able to receive a tax break on your property taxes. And that is something relatively new, but now we're starting to see more LOSAP participants take advantage of that tax benefit.
Absolutely. I see that as a huge benefit for us. So, let's wrap it up. What does a LOSAP program mean to me? And how should an organization be using a LOSAP program to try to entice and attract those folks that are out there in their community looking to make a difference?
Well, Dave, as I said from the outset, without volunteering, there is no LOSAP program. Volunteers are truly the lifeline for a LOSAP program. And local towns and governments and municipalities and fire districts and ambulatory services have known this for years. And this has become a priority in some local governments and municipalities and so forth that haven't had a LOSAP program in place before, because now they're realizing it is difficult to attract volunteers consistently. And you need to have a core of volunteers that you can rely upon to go out to these fire calls and ambulatory calls. So they're utilizing LOSAP. We're seeing an uptick now in people, local officials, want to have LOSAP programs in where they live. And for those individuals that are thinking about volunteering, we certainly encourage you to volunteer for so many reasons. But most importantly, making an impact in your community, saving a life. There's nothing greater than that, Dave. I mean, if you're there and you've made a difference, the reward, while yes, there's a financial reward to it, the personal reward far outweighs the financial reward. But when you do look at that financial reward, it's nice to look back being a volunteer for 20, 30 plus years, and then receiving that distribution award for your efforts. And again, those efforts from financially can be sizable if you stay in for a period of time. So, we strongly encourage, if there's questions, to contact Penflex, and we'll be glad to come out and meet with your local town boards, municipality boards, fire commission boards, whatever it may be, to discuss the benefits of a LOSAP program and why now it makes greater sense than ever to have a LOSAP program in place.
Paul, I know when we start talking about the dollars amounts that we've been discussing here, there's got to be a lot of nuts and bolts that go into a system like this, a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. I think it's really important that somebody, picks their partner as they're moving forward with this type of endeavor. And we're going to talk about a bunch of those in the future sessions. But if somebody has any questions now or wants to learn more about a program or has specific questions, how can they get a hold of you to get some of those answers?
So Dave, on this slide, what we did to try to make it as easy as possible for people, we have an email address, simply info@penflexinc.com. You can email us and we will certainly respond. We have a phone number that you can also reach out to us. And again, we'll be more than happy to have a discussion with you over the phone, through a virtual meeting, to come out face to face. We have clients all over the country. And with technology now, it certainly makes it easier to be able to speak to more people in a shorter period of time, because technology makes it simple. So we've definitely seen, again, an increase in the inquiries that we're receiving about LOSAP programs. And we do a lot of virtual meetings with local boards to give them more information.
Very good. Last week, I was honored to be on a presentation by the NVFC on recruitment and retention. And I know LOSAP was talked about a fair amount on that program and what that's meant for some of the organizations. So if folks haven't taken a look at this yet, probably one of those recruitment and retention tools that we really want to dive into. Paul, any final thoughts before we leave here today?
Well, again, Dave, I appreciate you having Penflex on the webinar today. LOSAP is a great tool, a great resource for local governments to attract and retain people. And, it's a great opportunity for Penflex to be able to service the volunteer fire service and EMS workers, and could be more proud to have that opportunity to do so.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your time and your expertise. Really looking forward to the future sessions and diving into these programs and what they look like. So I think I'm just scrolling down through the chat box here. I think we've answered everybody's questions as they've come in privately. But again, if anybody has anything that we didn't cover for you today or is interested in learning more about the programs, all the information is up there on the screen. So until the next session, thanks for joining us and be safe out there.